Good morning, everyone. I'm going to begin our prayer time by reading the daily word for today, which seemed to be a great fit for our theme, and that is power. The word for today is power. The affirmation is, I have the power to choose my thoughts and direct my life. I have the power to choose my thoughts and direct my life. So I invite you to close your eyes if you're comfortable doing so as we take this into a time of prayer. Feeling my power from within means I am grounded in spiritual truth and understanding. I speak my mind with calm certainty and change my mind when I choose. I live in a state of inner security and mastery. If I wish to make changes, I take dominion of myself and have faith in my innate power as a spiritual being. In the past, I may have looked outside myself to feel powerful, taking on others' beliefs or affiliating with something outside myself. Now I understand true power comes from within. I take dominion over my thoughts and feelings. I live my truth in confidence, knowing my thoughts derive from divine ideas. One with God, I have the power to create my life. I have the power to choose my thoughts and direct my life. Well, let's take a moment, and perhaps you might wish to take a breath and very easily let it out as we relax physically and allow our thoughts to calm down as we focus on that presence and power of Spirit, that inner presence here with us now that is ever guiding, blessing, loving, and supporting us as we make the choices in life that are for the highest and the best. Life here on earth is full of changes. Change is the way life operates. Some changes are difficult. And yet we are open and receptive to that presence which guides and supports us. Beloved Spirit, we are open in mind and heart to your blessing. And we affirm that you are ever available to us. The true love and light come from within. And so it is that we look and listen for your guidance. We are grateful. There is much to be grateful for. Even in the midst of change and challenge, we are grateful. And above all, we are grateful for that presence of Spirit. We are never alone. And for that we say, thank you, God. And so it is. Amen. Anybody want to stretch? If you do, feel free. I think it's good to stretch on Sunday mornings. If we haven't met, my name is Tom Catlin, Reverend Tom. I was the minister here from the end of 1990 to, 2014 or something like that? 2015, something like that. It was a long, now it seems like a long time ago, doesn't it? But it's wonderful to be up here to share with you this morning. And I can imagine, though, it's something of a challenge to see me up here instead of Reverend Richard, knowing that he has gone on to this new chapter, that exciting new chapter in his life. And in fact, this is really the beginning of a new chapter in the life of this ministry. And it may seem a little ironic that the old minister, let's say former minister, is up here instead. But that's how it worked out. So here we are together. Good morning, everyone. Here we are. Well, thank you. But I could understand, if people feel a little anxious about the fact that change is afoot and Richard isn't here, and change can be challenging. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that here this morning. In fact, Pam and I were not here last week for Richard's last Sunday at Unity of Prescott. We were very sorry to miss it. We were in Hawaii. So, I know. Now, we had arranged this trip a long time ago, at least long before Richard announced his departure. And so, we could have canceled our trip so that we could have been here on his last Sunday. We thought about that for about a minute or so, I don't know. But anyway, we love Richard. Pam and I have known him since 1991, and we think he's adorable. But we didn't cancel our trip. So we did hear, though, that it was a great Sunday, and we will miss him too, and we wish him all the best. And for him and his family. And we wish all the best for Unity of Prescott as we open the way for a great good that lies before us, we believe. The highest and the best. And we're going to touch upon that here today. But speaking of Hawaii, I did want to mention a little thing that happened for Pam and I. It was the day before we were leaving to come home. And we were kind of exploring, and we were on this sort of rural beach road. And the shorter version anyway of the story is that we slammed the trunk and locked everything we owned in the trunk of this rental car. I mean, our phones, our wallets, the key to the car, which I didn't think you could do that, but I thought those key fobs wouldn't let you lock it, but here it was. It was in the trunk. Everything was in there. And so we spent some time, I did anyway, just sort of staring at the trunk and trying periodically to pull on the door handle, thinking that magically something might happen that would allow us to get back into the car. But actually what I was trying to do, really, was to be as present as I could and allow myself to be in that vertical dimension of life that really allows for wonderful things to happen. Now, across the street from us was a house that had no trespassing signs and a couple of pit bulls on chains, I kid you not. And so we were waiting there, I was trying to be, like I said, I didn't want to get into anxiety and into an anxious place because I knew that really wasn't going to be productive. So about that time, Penny appeared. Penny came walking her little fluffy white dog, and I guess my focus had been elsewhere because I didn't even see her coming off in the distance. All of a sudden, she just seemed to be there, and she had her cell phone with her, and she wasn't very good at operating the cell phone, but we managed to call AAA. Now, this phone had the smallest print on it that I have ever seen, and my glasses were, of course, in the car, along with the AAA card which was in the car, but we managed to reach somebody, and even though we didn't have the card to give them the number, they found us in their system, and so I was talking to this lady with the dogs barking loudly across the street. She needed to know where we were in order to send assistance, and so we could see the number on the mailbox across the street, but we didn't know the name of the road. Well, we paused for a moment, and then very calmly, Penny walked across the street, opened this guy's mailbox, took his mail out, and found the name of the street, which was this Hawaiian word that was a little difficult to recollect, while I was looking at the dogs and hoping the chain wasn't any longer than it was. Anyway, they found us in the system, and the tow truck driver eventually showed up, and he said, well, I don't know if I can get into the car, but if I can, if the car does not start, then it's hopeless. And I thought, well, I don't like the sound of that. I don't know exactly what that means, but he was able to get in. It's interesting, he like stuck this thing like a blood pressure cuff in the door, and he pumped it till it, and then he stuck this stick in there, and we were good. Well, someone that I told this story to said, well, that was Penny from heaven. And certainly she was an unlikely angel, but she was an angel of sorts. She didn't look much like an angel, but there she was. She showed up. She helped us work it out. She had what we needed to make the phone call. She was very kind, and then she sort of disappeared. Well, I don't know exactly how we managed to attract her so easily into our life experience, but maybe it had something to do with the fact that we were really trying to stay on that vertical dimension. We weren't doing it perfectly. I wasn't anyway, but we were doing, must have been done pretty well, because there she was. One of the things is that Pam and I have been using a travel affirmation, and I couldn't say whether we actually affirmed it that day or not, but maybe we did. At the first service, Pam had to dig it out of her wallet because I had forgotten to bring it up here, but I have it on a piece of paper. The travel affirmation. Yeah, it was, clearly. It was, because it was in Pam's purse. But it goes like this: God bless our trip. We are on a journey of joyful discoveries and beautiful experiences. God goes before us, making safe and friendly our way. We expect the good, and we find it in helpful hearts wherever we go. We enjoy good health, happy days, and peaceful nights. Wherever we go, God is, and all is well. God is our travel agent. And this actually comes from some Unity source, and if you'd like a copy of it, Candy can get one for you in the office. So what do I mean by the vertical dimension? Well, it's really a vibrational thing. We live a lot of our life on the horizontal plane where we're doing things. This vertical dimension that I'm talking about is really about being as opposed to doing. But where we are on this vertical dimension has a lot to do with how things go on that level of doing, on that horizontal plane. And as we move higher on the vertical plane, we are raising our vibration, our energy signature, and we are raising the level at which the creative and joyful power of spirit can manifest and express in our lives. It is really an essential part of who we are, but oftentimes, if we're stuck in some kind of lower, denser, because our thinking, our consciousness we're creating an energy field. And when we're able to elevate that energy field, then we open the door to, because the frequency is higher and finer and more transparent to the greater good that it can manifest in our lives and that we're creating. So I think we could probably agree that this is a time when things can be, if we're willing, if we go there, can be pretty stressful. It's a pretty stressful time we live in. It's challenging, and whether we're talking about our personal lives or things on a more global level, or the fact that Richard has gone on to Florida, leaving pretty large shoes to fill. I figure they're about size 13, probably. So I decided to talk about this vertical dimension and how it is that we might make the choice to move up higher. And so while the board and the search committee are doing their part, and we can be confident that they are doing what is theirs to do and they are prayed up, we all have a part to play in holding the consciousness for the highest and the best to unfold here at Unity of Prescott. And we don't have to go down that road of anxiety, and if we find ourselves there, maybe it's time for us to reassess and recalibrate where we are in our thinking. Now, I don't know if this is really the best possible way to try to explain this, but or illustrate it, but it seemed like a pretty good way. So I'd like to share with you something from a book called Power versus Force by David Hawkins. Anybody remember David Hawkins? David lived in Sedona. He was a very out-of-the-box thinker about consciousness. And he really embraced this idea that our thinking, our consciousness, is active on a certain level, and it may be moving around from one place to another, depending on whether we're having a bad hair day or we got out of bed on the wrong side or whatever might be going on for us. But we always have the choice to decide where we're going to be and what our thinking is going to be like. And then we are creating and attracting at that level. So, up on the screen, I'm going to ask Dave, so I realize that those of you in the back don't have a chance of reading this, but we are handing out, we figured that out this morning. So, our lovely and talented ushers are handing out some pieces of paper there that might help. But those of you in the front, maybe you can see this. This is in two parts because we couldn't fit it all on one slide. So it's what Hawkins calls a map of consciousness. And it's really, now there's a lot of stuff on here. I would draw your attention to just where it says level and that part that's in bold. But it's going to, I think it's a way for us to get some idea of what it is that we're talking about when we talk about this vertical dimension. So we're going to show you the lower half of this. This is, the lower half is the denser, lower vibration place that we might find ourselves in from time to time, but it's the place that we really want to shift out of. We start at the bottom with shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear. We're moving up here now. Desire, anger, pride, courage. This is still all in that lower realm. You know, this is, of course, you all know that this is Super Bowl Sunday. And so I was looking at this, thinking about the Super Bowl, and it seemed to me like NFL football is kind of in those four places at the top of the lower section here. Courage, pride, anger, and desire. It seemed to me that that's really a lot of what an NFL football game is about, and many of us this afternoon will sit down happily and watch the game and fully engage in that state of mind. I just think it's probably not great to stay there on the long term. But it does remind me of I have a Super Bowl story here to share with you. It goes like this. A woman from Wisconsin had 50-yard line tickets for the Super Bowl. As she sat down, a man came along and asked her if anyone was sitting in the seat next to her. No, she said, the seat is empty. This is incredible, said the man. Who in their right mind would have a seat like this for the Super Bowl, the biggest sporting event in the world, and not use it? Somberly, the woman said, bless you. No, she said, somberly, the woman said, well, the seat actually belongs to me. I was supposed to come here with my husband, but he passed away. This is the first Super Bowl we have not been together, since we got married in 1985. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. That's terrible, said the man. But couldn't you find someone else, a friend or relative or even a neighbor, to take the seat? The woman shook her head and said, no, they're all at the funeral. So, when I look at this chart, let's go to the upper chart, if you wouldn't mind, Dave. Here in this, we see that the way Hawkins has set this up, he's got neutrality, willingness, acceptance, reason, love, joy, peace, and enlightenment. And so these are all states of higher vibration. And as we move up into that higher vibration, any barrier that might be there for a greater good, for an insight, for a divine idea, for an angel to show up in your life, that barrier becomes thinner and more transparent so that that greater good can unfold in our lives. And we get to make the choice about moving up. Now, one of the things about this is that these lower vibration states of mind, while they may not be entirely comfortable, in many cases they're what we're familiar with. And so we sometimes get stuck in them. And one reason why I'm talking to you about this here today is because it wasn't too long ago that I got kind of stuck in a worry place. I have sort of a history where there's something I can fall back into if I'm not really aware. I kind of looked to my father on this. My father was sort of a professional worrier, and my mom once told me that he believed that if he worried about something enough, it wouldn't happen. Now, we know that that's not a very healthy state of mind, and in Unity we would affirm just the opposite, that what we focus on we tend to attract. But anyway, it may have been something that he influenced me in, but we all know that we have a choice, and I have a choice at this point in my life to stop blaming my father and to just make my own decision about where I'm going to be. But it did happen that I found myself in a place where I needed to do some reassessment, actually kind of a tutorial of my own on where I really wanted to be and what I was willing to do about it. So, one of the things that this chart reminds me of is the fact that Albert Einstein famously made the quote that no problem is solved on the level of thinking that created it. And I believe what he was talking about is the fact that if we're stuck in some kind of place, and you'll notice that when it comes to worry, it's kind of comparable to anxiety. It's not very high on this chart, and it's not a place where you want to spend a whole lot of time if you can choose otherwise. So what I was realizing was that in order to make a shift, I really needed to, A, let go of a thinking pattern that I was hanging on to, and to really allow myself to move up into a higher place. And so what I did was to put together some ideas that I thought I would share with you here this morning. One other thing to mention is that in the title of his book, he talks about power versus force. Well, force is something that tends to operate at the lower levels of consciousness where people try to get things done by application of force. But power, true power, the power that comes from within, the power that is really of spirit, increases as we go further up on this chart. And his example of this was Mahatma Gandhi, who was a little 90-pound man, although from a power point of view, he was quite high on this chart. And he was able to defeat the British colonial system, which calibrated much lower, just because he had a source of true power in his consciousness. So, I have put together a few ideas that I thought I would like to share with you about how we might make this shift if we find ourselves in a place where we really would care to, and we realize that we have the power to make the choice. Charles Fillmore believed that choice was one of the great assets that we had as human beings, that we could choose something higher. So number one is willingness. And I think willingness is really the basis for so much of everything else that we're going to talk about here today, because a place to start is to be willing to change. It might mean letting go of some cherished idea, something about us being right. It's some track of thinking that we've been maybe unconsciously holding on to. So a willingness to make a change is really the place, I think, that we start. The second thing that I wanted to mention, and by the way, for those of you who got that chart on paper, I listed these on the back. The second is prayer and meditation. Now, prayer and meditation are a really important part of unity and our perspective on life. The power of prayer to make change in ourselves and therefore in our world and our life experience. Now, I think of prayer and meditation as distinctly different things. Prayer, to me, is really about a declaration. We talk about affirmative prayer, which is not pleading with God to make a change. Affirmative prayer is really about declaring the truth as we know it. And it's really a way for us to recalibrate our thinking and make a connection with that presence of God. Meditation is really more about becoming quiet and allowing the space for that presence of consciousness to bless us with peace and joy. Now, for me, sometimes it's difficult to meditate if I'm agitated or my thinking is really worked up, but I can almost invariably pray. And sometimes when my mind is agitated, that's the best thing to do. And I endorse the idea of perhaps just getting down on your knees. I find that it's helpful every once in a while to shift where I'm at. Number 3 is compassion. Those of you who are interested in Buddhism know that compassion is really a central component to Buddhism. I wanted to read to you what Hawkins said in brief here about compassion. He said, "The empathy derived from contemplating this map of consciousness will hopefully make it a shorter step to joy. The key to joy is the unconditional kindness to all life, including one's own, that we refer to as compassion. Without compassion, little of any significance is ever accomplished in human endeavor." The fourth thing is spiritual study. I think of myself as a student of truth, and we can all be truth students if we choose to be so, and if we do, then I think we are really enrolling ourselves in the most important course of study that we could really embark upon at all. We could call it Life and Truth 101, but basically, we are students of life and how to live. Now, fortunately for us in this day and age, there are many sources available, teachers. There are some wonderful teachers. Many of them come to us through New Thought and through Unity, but there are also wonderful contemporary teachers available to us with books that are meaningful. I think of books in particular, and I don't know, but I would guess that there are a number of you here today who at some point in your life read a book, heard a teacher, heard a speaker. There was something that all of a sudden turned on a light or opened a door for you that put you on a different track, and that's why you're here this morning. Well, if there is such a book for you, I encourage you to go back and reread it. It's amazing to me how sometimes we reread a spiritual book and we realize, wow, there's so much more here than I remember from the last time. But if there isn't a book like that, then we have a lending library downstairs that's full of wonderful books. Also, there are a lot of teachings online in podcasts and YouTube that you can actually listen to somebody who is teaching something spiritually true. And in my way of thinking, when we read a book like that or we listen, there is a process that takes place where we actually shift into greater alignment with the consciousness of the person who wrote the book or is speaking the words, and it can actually elevate us to something closer to where they're coming from. Gratitude is the next one that I have down here. We focus on gratitude a great deal here at Unity, and I mentioned at the first service that there was a time many years ago when I actually contemplated the idea, wouldn't it be nice to change the name of this church from Unity of Prescott to Unity of the Grateful Heart? I thought that was said something really meaningful, but I never went to the board with it. We stuck with Unity of Prescott. But gratitude is a state of mind that attracts greater good into our life. It is a shortcut to elevate us on this chart, because for one thing, you can't be grateful and miserable at the same time. Service is the next thing. I think an important way of getting out of our own way, if we find ourselves kind of caught up in some anxious thing or whatever, is to do something for someone else. It really helps us to get out of our way, and I do believe that the more we can do it without getting credit for it, the better. The next thing was nature. We live in a wonderful place to interact or be in touch with nature. Trees and animals and nature, it's all such a blessing. If we want to go out and just be in it, let ourselves sort of feel part of it. The deer are all in the now. They're all in the present moment, and that's really where spirit dwells. Spirit isn't off in the future someplace or in the past. Spirit is in the now, and when we allow ourselves to connect with nature, I think it can do wonders for us to shift our way of being. And as long as we're talking about now, I think it is important for us to realize if we're preoccupied with the future or the past, concerns about the future or regrets about the past, or whatever our brain, whatever our thinking mode is tracking on, it's important to be here, be present, if you're interacting with someone, be present for them, and be open to the presence of spirit that is forever in the now. And affirmation. We do a lot with affirmations here in Unity. I think it's a powerful way to shift gears. And the Fillmores were great advocates of affirmation. They actually talked about denial and affirmation, but that's kind of another story. But an affirmation is really it's a statement of truth that we can make that can, I think, put us on a different kind of a track. And as we reaffirm something, then we are redirecting our thinking in a more constructive direction. I have an affirmation that I thought up for today that I'm going to invite you to join in sharing with me. And it goes like this. Unity of Prescott is attracting the perfect spiritual leader. In joy and confidence, I let go and let God. I'm going to say it one more time, and then I'm going to invite you to join me. Unity of Prescott is attracting the perfect spiritual leader. In joy and confidence, I let go and let God. Together? Unity of Prescott is attracting the perfect spiritual leader. In joy and confidence, I let go and let God. And so it is. I have every confidence that this process, though it may have its ups and downs and hiccups, this process of opening the way for new spiritual leadership here is going to, the outcome is going to be something great. It's going to be something really wonderful. So we're going to do our best to open the way for that higher good to unfold. And I will say that incidentally, it is not a bad idea to be here. I know there's some people, and those of you, there may be some of you who are watching on YouTube today, and I realize that, it may well be that there's a very good reason why it doesn't make sense for you to be here physically. And so we really appreciate the fact that you're here with us in spirit and by video. But, it doesn't hurt to be here in this spiritual community collectively. I don't know about you, but I generally always leave here feeling better. So over the time to come, I know we'll have different speakers on Sunday. By the way, Billy Martini's going to be here next Sunday. She is a delightful person. I know you're going to love her. So I've known her for many years, so I would really encourage you to be here next Sunday. Well, I would invite you now to let's take this thought into prayer here for a moment. And remind ourselves that there is a presence of Spirit that is guiding us every step of the way, and it is supporting us as we move higher in our awareness, as we choose to affirm the highest and the best in our lives, in our world, in this spiritual community. We are ever grateful for this awareness that the presence and power of Spirit is with us now and always. We are never alone. And for this we are ever grateful. Thank you, God.